Okay, well, tell me what you've been ruminating on as we've kind of covered all the content so far, and we're not quite ready to go into the skills. We'll touch on them a little bit today, but really trying to lay that foundation of helping you guys be in a place where you feel confident to know the whys and the hows of all that we're talking about and presenting this information to other people.
I think for me, there's two couples that are premarital engaged couples that we've been meeting with this summer as they're getting married, and with both of them just kind of started in the Romans 12:15, which may be something that we talk about today, but it's kind of that idea of emotion and kind of what we talked about last week of our emotions are integral. We need to pay attention to them. And just with both couples, they were both like, we didn't think this would be what marriage counseling was going to teach us, but just trying to help them see that really knowing their hearts and knowing each other's hearts really is the key to connectedness. And I think a lot of times engaged in premarital couples probably think about, tell us what we need to know about finances and sex and conflict resolution and all these kind of topics, but hardly gets to the idea of emotion and just the idea of connecting hearts together. So it's been good. It's kind of been revolutionary and surprising, I think, for them that's where we start.
Have they jumped in and been okay with that, or has there been some fear or trembling in that?
With one couple, they said before they did the exercises, they were a little scared, like, okay, we don't tend to do this often. And then we gave them time to do it on their own, came back, they shared about it. It was like, wow, that was like immediately connecting. Like, and even as Kimberly and I modeled it for them, they said after we got done, they're like, I kind of wanted to look away because you guys were so intimate, and so it's almost like we're like looking in on your room, and it's not like we were like overly romantic in it, but it was just very close and connecting. And so I think it surprised them how connecting, sharing emotion with the intent of connecting really is. So yeah, they've jumped into it.
Very cool. Testimony. How about others? Things you're wrestling with, things you're trying?
Although I'm about 2 chapters into the knowledge of that I'm a half-brained Christian, so I got the been interesting. I'm curious what's ahead, but yeah, he's kind of just touched on kind of the relational piece and the right brain, how it's a little ahead of the left brain, and yeah, I'm totally left brain guy, so should be interesting how that plays all together. So
has that been good or troubling or?
No, it's been great. I'm excited to see. I mean, just to, he sounds like after doing this for a couple of years, he's just really kind of seen renewed growth from like when he was a young believer, kind of kickstart him again. And
right.
He's a pastor, obviously, but yeah, it doesn't. It's probably good for everybody. So that's been great.
Yeah, that's fun.
Yeah, for us, I kind of mentioned this before, but the key to staying connected, even just as an overall theme between Hallie and I, Lainey and I, people around us that we're connected to, and then to the Lord and all of that, as we walk through, these changes of moving into the next phase and airplane tickets and going to launch, and not everything's going to be tied up the way you want it. And I just think the Lord has been really good. And he has been, which is crazy, but he's been extra, not like he's not always attentive. He always is, but he just seems to have been extra attentive to make connection with us. Does that make sense? I just feel maybe it's not true that it's any different, but it feels true to say he's been extra careful to make sure that we make connection with him and with others. And he's giving us key verses, special verses that only he would know. All the things that these little, what we would call signs, but it's not signs of, okay, we're doing the right thing, but it's okay, man, he's close and he's reading this. And so just, he's holding the universe together and he's measuring it with the palm of his hand. And he's saying, why can't you stay connected to me? I've got this. so he's been super cool and good to make connection with us and find ways. And so we just thank him for that.
For me, Pat, I feel like I'm still learning some of these tools, and the thought of presenting them to others is still a little intimidating, but I feel like it's been nice to feel like learning through this time, learning through the series you're, taking us through the summer as a church. So I feel like a lot of learning going on, but it seems good and helpful, and a lot of light bulbs going off in my brain and in my heart.
Fun. Well, remember, these are not intended, the recordings that we're posting right now are not intended to be like me teaching it to couples. It really is designed to be a training tool. So if a question comes up, you go, well, wait a minute, what did you just say? Anything at all that we can create a better training experience or understanding, that's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to create this very interactive way for us to process this stuff and feel more comfortable handling the content and being familiar with the vocabulary and the concepts and the theology, and so please feel free to jump in with a question, or I don't really watch the chat, but if raise a hand, or once I get going, you may just have to interrupt me verbally because my screen gets into that little, I can't really see more than one or two of you at a time once I start sharing my screen. But feel free to jump in. You're not interrupting a highly refined program here. So. Okay.
Yeah, one of the things I was thinking about, Pat, I had a conversation with Roger Everhart, and then we picked up that Great Commandment Principle book and started it. But it was cool because it was exactly what we were talking about. But I think just the idea of like the Great Commission being within the context of the Great Commandment, I think sometimes we put the Great Commission as the context and then put the Great Commandment as like within that context. It's like a piece of that. But I think that there's kind of a shift in one way of thinking or the other. Is the Great Commission underneath that greater principle of the Great Commandment, or is the Great Commission the bigger principle in the Great Commandment of loving one another, or loving God and loving our neighbor, loving one another underneath that? I think it's a pretty big kind of, I don't know, just big picture, even as we think about making disciples.
Right.
I appreciated that. So I'm not very far along in that, but it was cool because I was just, talking about that. And even the idea of like, is healing part of the mission? Does God want us to be healed and to be healthy, or is the mission really the only focus? And then health is kind of irrelevant, or is it tied together? I guess those are two different things, but just things I've been thinking about, how the Great Commission fits in to some of the other parts of what Jesus taught.
Yeah, that's a great observation, Dov, and I don't want to turn anybody's worldview all upside down. Here's how I've thought about it, though. Which one of those things is going to exist once the new heavens and the new earth are created? Which of those, the Great Commandment or the Great Commission? What are we going to be walking in, living in, a billion years from now? I don't know when he's coming back. Maybe he still will not have come back in a billion years. I don't think that's true, but and to recognize, and so that even that beginning message where it's shared what is on God's heart and why is it so important, this goal of oneness, the integrated nature of living in the Great Commandment as a means and a power source for completing the Great Commission. So it's not like this nice thing. Well, if you can get it, that's great. Just make sure you keep charging ahead on the great commandment. No, there's an abiding and a learning to love into and under the headship of Christ and outward into his body and outward again into the world which we're trying to demonstrate this oneness and this care and this connection. So I think what you're saying is critically important, so that we don't ignore that which God has said will give us power, that will bear testimony of his presence in our midst, how well we actually live out the great commandment. And life flows from that. And even Jesus' ministry, in the midst of obviously wanting to bless all the nations on the earth and establish an earthly kingdom, at the core of that is that Isaiah 61 picture of setting captives free, of healing broken hearts, of comforting those who mourn, of creating life and health in the innermost man, so that we can live from that place of loving and being loved and experiencing that oneness. So I think it's that way, but I'll leave it to other theologians to wrestle out the balance point. I just wonder if in evangelicalism maybe we've, at a minimum, I think we've neglected that slider of living in the great commandment. Maybe it's not a complete flip things around, but I would say especially those in the mission field and those trying to grow churches and leadership, we can really press on that task side and potentially miss the blessing and power that flows from giving attention to the loving one another, loving God side. So it's a great observation. Let's talk.
Yeah, thanks, Pat. That's a lot of good stuff. Appreciate it. I was assuming as you were talking about those different families, the fear, shame,
Yep.
pride, that each of us dabbles in all of them at some point, but kind of gravitate towards one where we kind of would you say that's the case? I feel like I connect with all of them a little bit, but
Yep. I think everybody's different. Cindy rarely gets angry. I mean, that would not be a coping mechanism she would use. And I've never heard a single shame narrative come out of her mouth. Everything she responds to is rooted in that fear family. I just think it depends on who you are, how you respond. Some people jump all over. Some people are in a place where they live in one, and I don't think there's a universal truth. That's just my experience. Someone smarter or more aware maybe may know that, but I've not seen it.
That makes sense.
I like to say I'm a perfect balance of all three of those obstacle stuff.
Balanced in all things.
Equal opportunity coping mechanisms. I was curious, you mentioned Steps to Freedom in Christ. I listened to something from Neil Anderson recently and was intrigued by those. Have you used those?
Oh yeah.
And would you recommend those as useful?
I do. I absolutely do. I think it's kind of a core discipleship thing. Not everybody's deeply impacted by it, but I think it's just a way to do an inventory and walk through. So I would say it's, I don't know what percentage, just because I don't know, I'll say half and half. It's half kind of contemplative, unpacking potential lies or entanglements of spiritual nature, and then half identity declaration, where you're proclaiming what God has said over your own soul, and so a little bit warfare-y, spiritual warfare, and that wouldn't be my typical primary way of doing things, but I think it's a really good self-assessment tool. And if there are things, just my own story, my first exposure to pornography, I was probably 10 years old. This is way before it was very accessible. And some of the images I saw would just float up into my head. It was just the weirdest times. It was not pursuing it or thinking about it. I'm out mowing the lawn, and this picture comes up. I go like, where is that coming from? And I walk through that, and one of the sections is with, you know, sexual sin or sexual um, pornography or any exposure, any alliances or connections you've made of a sexual nature. And I walk through that. I can't even remember those pictures. I mean, there something got burned into my brain that was a spiritual nature, and God just healed it. And I could not tell you, other than there were naked people in the picture. That's about all the detail I could give you about that image I saw, because it's just gone. And it was just crystal clear in my mind for 35 years. So I think it's a good halfway tool between right and left brain stuff. But it's a great way to do an inventory.
I feel like the steps to freedom may be a good beginning place too. A lot of times, if people aren't ready for maybe TPM or even understanding how our past affects our present beliefs, because it asks you to kind of go back. And I've gone through it with a couple people where they go, "Oh my goodness, how did I not see that when this happened when I was, 7 or 8, that kind of really solidified this core belief that I'm still living today." And so I feel like it kind of opens people's eyes to seeing just how impactful and imprinting wrongly interpreted events affect our life.
Yeah, I would agree totally, Nate. I think there's less exhaustive tools that can help people kind of start going on that heart journey. I would put that one right at the center of that. And then the other one, a number of you have seen, called Fruit to Root by Jeff Vanderstelt, just really unpacking some of the gospel-centric ways we can miss who we are and what we're supposed to be doing. We can begin to try to force fruit rather than learning to step into the gospel and our gospel identity. So those would be the two tools I would use pre something like TPM to help people start exploring their inner world. And there's a couple others, but those are the two primary.
Pat, so you said, or this down, don't talk people out of their pain.
Yep.
And so I was wondering, like, what would that look like for somebody who's sharing a lot of regret?
For me, again, without a little more detail, I don't want to say, oh, this is what you do. But I think the question is asking questions. What would that say about you? Why does that feel that way? I would seek to get at whatever is so if we were looking at the chart of lies, beliefs, symptoms, where are they on that and what's informing it? So if we go back to, I'm not going to share the screen, but so you start with lies, you start with beliefs, you start with symptoms. So if the belief is it's my fault, that I'm okay. So what is that? Why is that? And what would the Lord have to say? And how could He comfort us? And what is the pain? What is the hurt? And some of those things just have to be. That could be a left brain process. And to say, okay, well, let's examine that. What part is your responsibility? Here's the reality, folks. All of us make a choice not to care about somebody dying in the world about every minute, because you can make different choices with your money, with your time. You could be serving on a suicide hotline right now instead of whatever else you're doing. We have to help people understand that we have a limited role in people's choices, and so somehow shepherding them to see that's where I would go. I can't make someone else's decision for them, but if that's painful to you, or what kind of choices would you want to make differently? So I think it's just lots of questions to help draw that out. What is going on? Why are you thinking that way? What does it say about you? Kind of questions. What do you think would happen if you'd done something different? You know that. Just giving them a safe place to process all that and see where it actually lands.
Okay.
I think there's also kind of the the TPM idea would be, is it lie-based emotion or truth-based emotion?
Yeah.
And so, like, is it worldly sorrow and worldly regret, or is it godly sorrow and godly regret? And so,
Yeah.
And so the idea might be is if there's regret, but it's based in lies, it would be kind of like what Pat was saying, like it's up to me to determine how this person should have turned out or whatever. It was up to me, where it's like, no, I think that's just God's in charge and we don't understand it, his ways, versus maybe a truth-based regret would be, I had every opportunity. The Spirit was prompting me. I know Jesus wanted me to obey here, and I didn't obey. That's truth-based pain. Like, you should feel a bit of like, I grieve the Spirit. That was a right feeling to feel, that pain in doing that. So I think trying to unwind, is this truth-based or lie-based regret?
Okay, and so the person I'm thinking of obviously is gonna have a lot of regret over the years. Like, I guess I'm thinking like, man, how do you like do it in little bits, or break it down? I just think it'd be overwhelming to do it all at once.
Yeah, I mean, fundamentally, we all, if we were paying attention, we understood our sinfulness and our brokenness, we'd all be just racked with regret. So what's the answer? Well, somehow the gospel has to become the sufficiency of Christ and his declaration of who we are. And even if we are guilty, that his grace is sufficient to wash that all away. And so I think there's gospel identity things that might be really important, and some of them might be broad brush, but that's why we've been so committed to tools like transformational prayer, because that helps position those people before the Lord to hear from him, and he has a lot more authority than I do to tell them that no, it's okay. I can tell them that a long time and they may not believe it, but they sense the Lord tells them that, it tends to have a little more power. So that'd be the direction I would try to go, is just helping them. Yeah, we're all guilty. We all deserve death and judgment. That's the gospel. But his lavish grace is declared us clean and righteous. That'd be the direction I would want to head.
Okay.
And just to throw it out there and see what you guys think, the way I've been approaching it, just because we're surrounded by people feeling regret right now in what we're walking through. And I've appreciated what you said, Pat, about not talking anybody out of it. It's like, I'm not going to talk you out of this feeling, but I want you to bring that regret. I want you to bring that, and then I want you to let go of it. So I'm not talking you out of experiencing it. I'm not talking you out of processing it. I'm not talking you out of it, but I don't want you to keep it. So in one sense, I'm talking you out of the keeping of it, but I'm not talking you out of the expression of it. Like, you need to express that. I regret this. And if you do not express that, you're going to hang on to that. It's going to eat you up. But I don't want you to, after you express it, I don't want you to hang on to it and keep pointing fingers. Like, I expressed it and I let go of it. But anyways, I don't know if that is in line with what you think of that, as far as I'm not talking you out of it, the experience of it.
Yeah, when I say that, maybe it's not the clearest way to say it. When I'm talking about, don't talk them out of it, is oh, you shouldn't feel that way.
Mm-hmm.
That's just not helpful. Oh, you shouldn't be sad because they're in a better place, or at a funeral, or that their suffering is ended, or whatever it is. Those are trying to tell them they should not feel that. There's a judgment of their pain or their emotional state, rather than, well, that seems like a really heavy thing, and it's probably very real. I can agree that that's what you're feeling, but is that something you would want to entrust to Jesus and release to him and let him define how you should feel or what you do feel in that situation? So I just think there's options. It's just not, you shouldn't feel regret. Stop it. Versus giving them a process, and one of those would be repentance or letting go of it or laying it at the feet of Jesus Jesus, or claiming our gospel identity. There's all kinds of ways we can approach.
And I think maybe helping kind of model and walk people through that experiencing comfort from God, and just say, you may need to walk through this receiving comfort from God 3, 4, 5, 6 times a day. I don't know where you're at emotionally, but just to be in this practice of saying, God, it really hurt when this happened, and I felt this. Can you by your Spirit come near and come comfort whatever you'd want to speak into that? Because it seems like what you guys are sharing is that I don't think people will be able to give up their regrets and their pains until the Lord has spoken to them in that. It'll kind of, I visualize it kind of like this magnet, like I'm trying to take this thing off me, but until my heart's changed, it's still got the polarity where it's just going to come right back and land right back on me until my heart doesn't have that attraction to that belief. And so, yeah, I'd agree, Holly. I guess I tend to think, especially in the situation you guys are in, that doing it all at once would be crushing. And more, my 2% of understanding the situation would be to just little by little, as the Lord brings things to mind, to receive the comfort from Him, to lay those things before Him.
Thoughts, questions? Back.
Pat, I had a question about one of the earlier slides with the beliefs and lies.
Yep.
And I know that you said, I'm trying to remember what you said, but I was having a hard time distinguishing between them a little bit. Beliefs, I think you were saying beliefs is, well, yeah, I clearly don't understand, so I'll let you clarify.
Again, I think in general, there's two
Yeah.
parts to what shapes us.
Hmm.
One is my interpretation of events. So as human beings, we're constantly assigning meaning to things, especially traumatic things. Something goes wrong, we're doing it on our own, and this is one of the reasons for relational connection. For children, if they experience trauma without being relationally connected, the likelihood that there's going to be a deeply held belief that's lie-based will be, it just goes up exponentially versus being in a relationship and helping, an adult or a trusted friend or someone helping them process that in a healthy way.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so there's and it may go back and forth. I don't even know if these are all good examples, but my understanding is that the belief is that my interpretation, either one could be summaries. The lie would be my interpretation, and the belief is, and so some of these, as I'm even reading them, I might switch around. This is a resource I got from Intimate Life. The lie is I'm gonna, I'm not safe. I'm not. I'm sorry. The belief is that conclusion. The lie is the interpretation of the event as you walk down. So you build the belief based on your interpretation, and then you draw conclusions.
Okay. So it's almost like if.
So in a tool like transformational prayer, the belief is the conclusion of whatever you interpreted from the event or situation.
So it's like my dad left me alone at the supermarket.
Yep.
And I interpret that as he does not love me. Therefore, I believe about myself that I'm unlovable and behave accordingly. Okay.
Yeah, and then so you get in that potentially that fear center column, and okay, I gotta take care of myself here. So again,
Thanks.
all of these tools are just designed to stimulate
Sure.
as you're becoming aware of people's behavior and their coping mechanisms, and how to care more relationally. It's probably a limitless maybe an infinite number of opportunities to see or respond or care, and the more we're familiar with the language, the more we're going to be able to handle the theology of the teaching and direct people to helpful tools.
Pat, one question I'm just thinking about when it comes to the rejoicing with those who rejoice, mourning with those who mourn. Like, I feel like I can, it takes work on the mourning with those who mourn, but I feel like I can do it more naturally in situations where I did not cause the mourning. But say within marriage and conflict resolution, I feel like I have a hard time mourning with someone who I caused mourning, and I probably turn towards defensiveness or some sort of self-protective thing. But I don't know if you have any thoughts on, maybe how to disarm that and try to meet my wife there. And, it seems more challenging than just an average morning with someone else outside of a problem I caused.
Yeah, for sure. And that's why we start where it's not my fault. I can care about your pain and I didn't cause it. That you start expanding the empathetic muscle. I do think there's maybe some other safety tools, more practice of the empathy. I don't know if you guys have ever walked through or refreshed that idea of the Genesis mandate, just really acknowledging I accept that and I accept you, and we know we're going to hurt each other. And so I think there's defensiveness, maybe assertiveness things to help you know that you're safe in that relationship, because it's probably something related to your sense of safety that makes that work. Because if you acknowledge you aren't worthy of her love, well, then that could be a really scary place. Something along that line. So there's ways to maybe even ask for care, and maybe some things for you personally in the gospel side of things that knows that you are accepted. But then just that practice of accepting each other. We're really trying to figure out what would it take for you to feel okay about saying, yep, that really was hurtful, and I own that. From her, what kind of relational connection or care or modification. I mentioned it, I don't know if it was last week or the week before, the idea that that's often what we spend the vast majority of time on in conflict, is creating safety. Is it okay if we're flawed? Is there a commitment that's not based on my behavior? Am I really accepted, even if I hurt you or do something foolish or spend our retirement savings on craft beer or something?
That's good. No, that's helpful. Yeah.
There's a line that I just finished a book by Marcus Warner and some of the guys that he works with, the Deeper Walk guys, on marriage. And they had a helpful line that I was going to try to start incorporating into our marriage is when you're having more of a disagreement, kind of setback relationally with your spouse, and you're in a good spot, but you notice your spouse isn't in a good spot. Just kind of this phrase to kind of help each other stay relational. They said is, let's keep the relationship bigger than the problem. And just to share that with each other. So as somebody's starting to get amped up, it's just kind of like a cue, like I can tell either you're getting defensive or you're shutting down, or let's keep the relationship more important than the problem. And that could be a cue for the other person to go, oh, I'm making the problem more important than the relationship. And so I just thought that might be a helpful line just for me as we work through the way we cope and do different things, just to, if somebody recognizes emotion of anger or withdrawal, just to be able to gently say, I'd really love to keep the relationship bigger than this problem.
That's good. Okay.
I've got a question. I feel like I'm 60% left brain, maybe 40% right brain. I'm towards the engineer, but not completely. I was just curious if you guys who maybe either are more left brain engineering or have worked with others, how have you started to kind of start to feel and like allowed yourself to go to your heart and allowed maybe others who are very analytical, very thought, deep thinking. How have you helped others either start to discover their heart and emotion, or how have you done that if you're kind of geared that way? Are there things that you guys have done or helped seen to do that?
So Dove, you and I don't get to answer, I guess.
Well, but you've helped other people probably, so you can answer.
Yeah, aren't there some engineers on here? Computer scientists?
I have more of an engineer brain, but I don't think I've answered that question yet.
Yeah.
Ditto,
Well,
ditto.
here'd be my observation. Oh, do you have something, Rex? Go ahead.
No, I agree. I feel like I'm more on that side of the brain, but I don't think I've figured out what I'm don't know yet.
Yeah. Well, I do think in general, and I think this is brain science. I think I understand it. I may not perfectly, but I think the way that the male brain is divided, we have an easier time being either purely relational or purely task. And so I think the comfortable place for many men is to be in that task. And so while I am a deep feeler, I'm also primarily motivated by task. And so choosing to step out of task and be in that care mode is a choice I've had to learn to make over time, because I'd rather get things done than everybody feel good about it. That's just my motivation would be, let's get a lot done. Let's win. Let's do whatever. And we'll feel deeply really good about getting a lot done. That's how I would blend those two things, my strong emotion and my task drivenness. So I think there is a choice teaching yourself to know, when am I in, paying attention, when am I in task mode and when am I in relationship mode. And when I can go into relational mode, I can begin to see people as valuable, as worth getting to know. I don't know if you can increase your capacity for how deeply you feel. That seems to be a temperament thing to me somehow, that some people have, everybody feels, but not everybody feels the same magnitudes. And so for me, it would be more an issue of learning to stay in relational mode, and then whatever your emotion is, it'll be in that caring posture. It'll be in that connected posture. It may not feel real extreme, but it could. So that would be my direction for somebody trying to learn how to do that, is, can I stop thinking primarily task and kind of switch gears and go. By the way, this is one of the dangers of pornography, and you guys have probably heard this if you've been through any of the programs like Clean or any of those kind of things. One of the dangerous things that happen in the addicted mind, and I don't even know if it's addict, it might be just even practiced, like a compulsion or affection for pornography. The objects of lust lose their humanity. Our brain puts them in the place that we use tools. They're objects. So you kind of that phrase, objectification of women. Our brain actually does that. We put, because we want something from them, we put them in there. You're just a tool. You're not a human. And I think we're always in danger of that when we're in task mode. I know I would be. If I'm leading a project and I'm in task mode, I'm not thinking about people's humanity. It's just, can you help me do this? And that I just quickly go to that place unless I'm really intentionally saying, I need to make sure the order is right here, that I'm first in relational mode, and that whatever we get done is fine in light of that. And for me, it's this obvious. This is how obvious it is. When I did this to Nathan, we were working on his deck. I said, okay, Nathan, here's the deal. This is how I work. I'd love to just sit around and chat and kind of make a little progress on your deck. And I can walk away going, that was fun. I enjoyed some time with Nathan. Or I can get this thing done. I can't do both. So you tell me, do you want me in task mode or relational mode? Because if you want me in task mode, I'm not guaranteeing how you're going to experience me. I'll try to be caring and kind in how I speak, but for me to go in task mode, I am hyper task and I've got 10 steps and 12 decisions, and it's just like crazy intense, and everything else just goes nowhere near my zip code. So
Is that why you threw the drill at me?
I'm even better in task mode about not being so offensive, but lots of people say, why do you have that scary look on your face when I'm in task mode? I'm going, I'm having a great time. I'm getting a lot done. I don't know why you're scared.
Yeah. It's good working on the deck with you, watching you do all the work for me.
Good. Well, good to be with you guys. I'm going to honor the time constraint here, so we're not going into whatever else you had planned, except Mark. Mark, you can hang around all afternoon and eat mac and cheese and watch the Jetson reruns. What else are you doing today?
I got a golf match today. It's Tuesday, so
Okay.
only one, baby.
Nice.
How come you're never at my golf course? I'm looking out my window. I keep looking for Mark. He's retired. He should be there someday, but I never see you.
I've been there.
Pat, we've got you coming down tomorrow, right?
Yep. We'll be down here.
All right, looking forward
Are
to
we
it.
playing poker after at the Deep Space? Are we meeting at Deep Space?
It's very possible. They have a poker night there. They moved it to a back room, but could be some
All
afterwards.
right, I'll hurry up and buy in after we finish up.
That sounds fun, but all right.
All right. See you guys.
Anyways, bye.